Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to a live edition of the Doc Talk podcast. And my name's Travis Justice. He's Dr. Rob Zatechka, and he's already drinking beer. Can you believe that? He's already drinking beer in celebration of Nebraska's 20-15 win over Boston College. The beer is from Ecology Brewing. Ecology Brewing, really cool can art.
It's like the coolest can.
It is. You know what? Where the hell is your? Talk into that.
Am I not talking?
No, you're not. I'm trying to figure out what the hell's going on.
Owen!
There you go.
Okay, how's that?
That's much
there
better.
We go. Okay.
See what happens when we're
it's like some of the coolest can art I've ever seen.
So Ecology Brewing is based out of, I got it.
Owen comes running.
Owen comes
Thanks, Owen.
running to save us. Ecology Brewing is based out of New Orleans, Louisiana. My daughter works at Ecology Brewing, and she poured these growlers for us right before she came up for Christmas, and she says, "Can you drink them on the podcast?" I said, "Absolutely." And you saw me drink a beer today, Rob. It's the first time I've had a beer probably since March. And
it's been a while.
It's been a while, and it's really good beer. So we're here to talk about Nebraska's winning the Pinstripe Bowl over Boston College. This is an interactive show, so we want you to leave comments in the comment section, or you can call 402-543-5556. That's 402-543-5556 is the number you want to call, and have fun with us. Before we get started, we'll dive into the game here shortly. Go ahead, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just give it a quick subscription. Also give the video a like. And again, when you leave comments, and lots of comments coming in already, we'll try to get to as many of those as we can. First of all, your first impressions, Rob, as the season comes to an end. Nebraska ends 7-6. It got interesting in the fourth quarter there, but a 20-15 win.
That was the most Nebraska game ever. I mean, we're bitching about the officiating. We're bitching about the announcing. We're special teams, turnovers. If you clean up the special teams, you clean up the turnovers, and this is a blowout. I mean, it's not even close.
Yeah.
If you go and you look at the stats to the game, and it's an interesting look at the stats. And the reason I say that is because they were really pretty evenly handed, I thought. I mean, you go down that stat line, it was 20-21 on first downs. You look at total yards, 348 for BC, 363 for Nebraska. That's fairly even. The big discrepancy, and I think the thing that really helped Nebraska in the game is if you look at the rushing yardage, Nebraska out-rushed them 131-47. That correlates over on the time of possession, my favorite stat of all time. 31 minutes to 26 minutes-ish for Boston College. So Nebraska had a 5-minute advantage in time of possession. In a game like this, that equates to probably about 2 drives. That's a big difference. I mean, that's a lot of clock burn. That's opportunities away from Boston College, who did some okay things on offense. I thought Nebraska's defense did an amazing job in the game, especially in the short yardage situations. Boston College, when I went and looked it up, they go for it all the time on fourth down. And I know the announcers had some comment about nobody's more aggressive than Boston College on fourth down. It's like, no, they're not. They just don't trust their kickers at all. And that's the reality of it. They do not have a great special teams group. Not that Nebraska's one to talk, but I do think we're undercoached and outperform on special teams for the most part. But Boston College has zero faith in their kicking game. They went for it 4 times. They were 0 for 4 on fourth down this game. Over the season, they've been a little bit better than 50% on fourth,
which is pretty good.
Yeah, they go for it a lot. And on the season, they hit it about 50% of the time. So it was a good job by Nebraska's defense, stopping them in those key moments on fourth down, prevented a couple of scores. But again, you look at the things that we've complained about with Nebraska all season, and we did see that again today. We saw the special teams miscues. You had the block punt. At the same time, they did some really amazing things. I mean, on one drive, starting the second half, you had the fake punt, but then you finish off that drive with a fake field goal attempt that doesn't succeed. that's one of those things I'd say, go ahead and just kick it, get the 3 points at that point. I appreciate the aggression. You've already shown it on the drive, but at that point, just get the points. In a game like this, where it's a fairly close game, it's bad weather, you've got a little bit of sloppy play, 3 points can be the difference between a win and a loss. And we saw how tight it got there right at the very end.
You know, the credit to defense, though. What was Boston College on fourth down? Because you look at what has happened with this defense since the end of the season, the coaching changes coming in, and I thought the defense definitely was the difference maker today.
It was, and that was something that I think people were really kind of wondering what they were going to see. Now, at the same time, you've got a D coordinator in Butler who is the defensive backs coach the whole season. I wasn't expecting a sea change today in terms of what we were going to see defensively out of Nebraska. I figured you'd still see a base, see that base 3-3-5 defense. I wasn't expecting a huge difference. The thing I did like is I saw a lot of aggression in the first half. The thing that worried me a little bit going into the game, and I do feel like we saw that during the game, you don't have a lot of depth on that defense. You've got the guys that you've lost to the transfer portal that have already signed with other teams, thinking about guys like Williams going to Florida State. You didn't have the depth. I would have liked to have seen a guy like Williams in there putting a little bit better heat on pass protection. You had guys like Judy stepping up. That was huge. But, I mean, at the end there, I mean, you were running damn near every play with Ty Robinson and Hutmacher on that defensive front. Guys get tired. You get worn out. I still think they're the best two defensive linemen on the team. You got to have them in there. And so that's one of those things where I appreciated the aggression early. I felt bad about the fact that I don't think they were able to be as aggressive on defense as that second half wore along, just because of the lack of depth. They didn't have the guys. The guys just didn't have the energy to come out as aggressive as they did late in the second half as they did in the first.
402-543-5556. Let's go to the phones. That's where Steve is down in Las Vegas. Steve, welcome to the Doc Talk podcast. What's going on, man?
Hey, love your show. I just got to say, I'm a longtime Husker follower. I watch your show every week, watch and go to the games. It is time, in my opinion, it is way past time to reassign Ed Foley to recruiting locally and to get on the phone and hire Bill Bush as special teams coordinator. This has to be done if you want to get back in the top 20. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I
go
appreciate
Big Red.
Yeah,
thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.
Appreciate the call. I think that's something that, I mean, God, our Twitter page has been lit up with Foley stuff the whole game. We haven't seen a major change in special teams productivity. They do some good things. They do some just absolute head scratching things. I mean, and the stuff today, when you look at like the blocked punt, for instance, and God, people were calling for Foley to get fired today, even before that.
Well, Bradley says, let's hear it for Foley. What a hell of a way to end a coaching career. Hope he finds a lake to retire at.
Well, and I think you've got a guy who has made some really good inroads in terms of, I'm going to call it the local recruiting here in Nebraska, Western Iowa. I think he's really appreciated in that regard by the high school coaches. But I'd be curious to see, when you look at the coaching rules now in terms of the number of guys that you can have on staff, it would make sense what Steve said. You keep a guy on staff to basically be maybe not by true title, but essentially by function as a recruiting coordinator, or at least a local recruiting coordinator. And you bring in a guy like Bill Bush. I mean, it's not like Rule hasn't been willing to make changes at the coordinator level on down. You had Holgerson coming in, Butler. I just completely blanked. The former D coordinator for Rule at
Tony White?
Temple. No, the new guy. Jeez, we just talked about it last week.
Yeah.
There's been so many, except not at special teams. You've got basically two new D coordinators on staff at Nebraska, new offensive coordinator. why not bring in Bill Bush? And even if you want to bring him in and call him, he's an analyst, but a de facto special teams coordinator for the team, get him back on staff in Lincoln. And I thought Bill was an amazing coach. He's shown a huge amount of acumen when you look back to that last
and loyalty.
season. Yeah. Well, when you look back at that last season, you got a guy that went from coming in as a special teams coach last fourth of the season. He was the D coordinator for Nebraska. And I thought he did a really good job at that. Get him back in there, get him as the special teams coordinator. You've got a guy that I think would be a great fit. I think he's an interesting kind of loyalty, and I say that in a good sense, because I think he's the kind of guy that can work well with whoever the head coach is. He's a guy that can work well with whoever the coordinators are. It's not like he meshes well with these people, but not those people. Bill's a chameleon. He can change and work with anybody.
And, I don't think I'm giving too much away, but Bill and I text each other because he's been on the podcast a couple of times. He wants to coach again. He wants to be at a Power 5. I think it makes perfect sense. He knows the landscape. He knows the culture. He knows a lot about Nebraska. He's from here, and it's okay for Matt Rule to go, you know what? Maybe I should have got rid of you the first time. Come back in, because he does make a difference when it comes to the special teams.
And I don't think Bill takes stuff serious. I don't think he takes stuff like that personally. I think he understands the whole notion, hey, it's a new staff, it's a new head coach, there's going to be some changes. He gets that. He's been on both ends of that. And so he understands that. So I don't think there would be hard feelings in that regard.
402-543-5556. Let's go to Omaha. That's where Nick is. Nick, welcome to the Doc Talk podcast. What's going on, Nick?
How you guys doing tonight?
Good.
Today,
doing great. Well, we got a win, and I am happy about that. I'm bitching about stuff, but I'm happy about the win.
Well, Rob, I'm in the same boat you are. I don't want to complain when we haven't won a bowl game in, 9-10 years, whatever the hell it's been. But there's too many things about this game that are all too familiar every time Nebraska plays a football game. 2 dropped interceptions, some, just really – you have chances to end that game in the second quarter. You just can't do it. When you're winning 20-2 and you're worried about losing late in the third quarter because you can't put a game away, people want to talk about one-score games. Oh, they lost a one-score game. They can't win one-score games. Well, why don't we just quit letting it get to a one-score game? That game should have been 35-0 in the third quarter.
I agree, yeah.
And you should have had backup plan. It's hard to be negative when you win a bowl game for the first time in 10 years, but it's not hard to be negative because there were so many things that happened throughout that game that just pissed me off to no end. And I think it pissed off a lot of fans because it's just, I'm sick and tired of all the same mistakes happening when a game should be put out of reach. And then when we lose a close game, we go, well, oh my God, they can't win a close game. When a lot of times these games shouldn't be close.
Agreed.
They end up making them close because they can't make the simple play. And the special teams thing, I know that Ed Foley's not the one punting. He's not the one kicking. He's not the one long snapping. But when this is getting to the point where I don't know that I've ever seen in my – now I'm still a young man. I'm only 37 years old. But I've watched a lot of Husker football.
You're young. You're young.
But I cannot remember a time where special teams was so bad that every time that a special teams team comes out onto the field, something bad is going to happen.
It is.
And
you're expecting the worst.
I was sitting there watching the game with my dad, who, Rob, by the way, you did anesthesia for him about 10 years ago on a hip replacement.
I told you somebody woke up, Travis.
So anyway, we're sitting there, and right before the block punt, I said, well, it wouldn't shock me one bit if this punt gets blocked, and you got to know they're coming for it because it's their only shot to stay in the game here, and yet they still give up a block punt. And it's like, I just don't know how the guy is still on staff. And I get his contract ends at the end of the calendar year, so hopefully he'll be gone. But if he's not, I got to start questioning what's going on at the top. And I like Rule, but at some point, the loyalty is going to cost you your job like Callahan if you can't get rid of that guy. Anyway, I'll shut up. Good win. I mean, they won the game. That's all that matters at the end of the day. But there's so many things that need to be fixed that I'm not as, I don't think, rose-colored glasses about this as everybody else. So I'll hang up and listen. Appreciate what you guys do. Love your show.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it, man.
Well, and I think Nick makes a good point there. And I'm not sure Rule. I'll be shocked if something doesn't happen on the special team side of things. Again, I'm going back to the fact that he had no problem. I shouldn't say he had no problem. It's always hard to demote a guy. It's hard to make changes like that. But you've got a situation where he made a change at offensive coordinator. When he brought in Holgerson as analyst, it's not like anybody looked at that and went like, oh, really? He's an analyst? It's like, no, he's the new O coordinator. We all knew that. There was zero doubt about that. He brought in a defensive analyst, and Tony White leaves. Butler steps up. You end up with a couple new coaches on that staff in addition to those two guys. And so I don't think Rule has a problem making changes, which is why I think so many people are surprised that at this point, there hasn't been a change on the special team side of things, unless Rule is sitting here and going, I don't know who to bring in as a special teams coach.
He's sitting in Lincoln right now.
I know.
He's
and that's
sitting
what
right
is
there.
Shocking to me. And guess what? I guarantee you, Bill Bush has zero hard feelings about being let go a couple years
because
ago.
Coaches understand when new coaches come in, there's always
Yes.
change. They understand that.
Bill gets it.
Yes.
And when we saw the analysts come in, the only thing that surprised me about that, little surprised on the defensive side, maybe in hindsight, maybe less so. But the only thing that really surprised me about that was that it wasn't on the special team side.
402-543-5556. Let's go down to Tulsa. That's where Greg is. Greg, welcome to the Doc Talk podcast. What's going on, Greg?
Hi, guys. Do you get nervous in the fourth?
Oh, yeah.
You should have seen Rob. He wanted another beer. He was ready.
Oh.
He was like, give me four more if you can.
I didn't, but I wanted one.
My point is, when Rule took over, he picked Raiola. He passed on Bush. There was a reason for that, and I don't think that reason has gone away.
Now, are you talking about the coaching side in terms of the offensive line coach?
He kept Raiola to go get Dylan.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel bad about that because I think when you look at that, and I do like Donnie. I think he's done a good job. I think he's had some limited stuff to work with in his time in Lincoln. O-line's a tough one because it's the one position that you can't flip it overnight in the portal is offensive line. You can bring in one or two great offensive line, but it's got to be a cohesive unit. So it's hard to do it in 1 year. But the thing that I was shocked about is that you've got a guy who's such a well-respected coach in Bill Bush that we haven't seen a change yet.
And let's not forget, Bill Bush is not only a great coach, he's a great recruiter. He sat on this
really
podcast,
is.
and I suggest you go back and watch both of the podcasts that have been on with Bill Bush, and he kind of talks about his recruiting philosophy, and he does his homework, man. He is very detailed when it comes to recruiting. Now,
he's a smart guy.
Now, it's changing now with NIL, right? I mean, that's going to change the dynamic a little bit because you can recruit all you want, but you got to come to the table with some money.
Yeah, but that's outside of the recruiter's control. If you've got a guy who, the money is what the money's going to be. If you've got a guy who's a good recruiter, that's a closer, and that makes a huge difference.
Anything else, Greg?
Well, it makes me nervous to have this kind of something's rotten in Denmark for all these guys to be leaving and everything. It just makes me nervous. I've been a fan since 65.
So, Greg, quick question. Now, when you say guys leaving, talking about the coaches or the players?
Yes. No, the players are going to follow some of the coaches.
Yeah.
Some of the players are in it. Dowdell was in it for the money.
Totally get it.
But I worry that the White's gone, that T-Knight left, that Cooper left.
And I agree with you to a degree there. There's like 9 different angles that have been looked at here. And one of the angles, because when you look at White leaving, like the two angles that stick out to me, one was that Rule knew he was going to end up being a head coach and he had to prep for that and get ready for that happening. And it might have happened earlier than he anticipated in terms of the fact that he brought in Butler to be the defensive backs coach and D coordinator in waiting. In hindsight, that seems to make a lot more sense to me, that it kind of forced White out. Now, at the same time, the other thing that I do kind of wonder about is that at the same time that Rule brought in Holgerson to be an analyst on offense, which again, I'm sitting here going, analyst. No, you were brought in to be the new O coordinator. I'm going to do quote marks a lot today. At the same time, he kind of quietly brought in a defensive analyst as well too. And what I wonder is, was Tony White sitting there going like, wait a second, this is the last 2 years have essentially been the two best defenses that Nebraska has had over the last 9 or 10 years, basically since Pelini was there.
Yeah, but he also has to start preparing for when Tony White was going to leave.
And I understand that, and that might be part of it. But at the same time, if you're Tony White and your boss brings in this analyst to review what you've been doing, are you going to sit there going like, okay, I'm arguably the best assistant coach on the goddamn staff. Fuck this shit. I'm getting out of here. I'm going to grab Terrence Knight and I are going to like get out of here, and we're going to head down to Florida where it's sunny and warm and we can recruit Florida kids to stay in Florida. I mean, I think that makes a little bit sense too. So I think there is a little at the end there. I really do think there probably was a little bit of a rift between the defensive staff and Rule. I'm not sure it was avoidable, might be the way to put it. But it's going to be interesting to see what Butler does over this next year, because I think he does have a little bit of a different philosophy in terms of how to run a defense than what Tony Knight did. But yeah, I do think there was a little rift there between White and Rule.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.
Thanks, you guys, for a great year.
Thank you. Happy New Year, sir. If you want to call in and be part of the show, 402-543-5556. That's 402-543-5556. Scott brings up a good point, and we were talking about this as we were watching the game together. Nobody's considering the weather conditions on the dropped interceptions, etc. It was a weird game. And
the weather played a part in that. I mean,
that field was shit, man. That was a bad field.
Yeah, dude, you're playing in a baseball stadium to begin with, which the novelty of it's actually, as a player, I would think that's kind of cool to be able to say, hey, I played in Yankee Stadium. Now, that's new Yankee Stadium. That's not old Yankee. That's not Babe Ruth's Yankee Stadium.
They haven't won a World Series in that stadium.
Have not?
They have not.
Have not.
Have not.
So,
but I mean, it's not very safe. They showed the water right when the game started, and you're sitting there going, who won? Because most fields have great drainage, and I'm surprised that Yankee Stadium didn't have very good drainage.
But look at it this way. You don't have this kind of weather April through October.
That's fair. That's fair. And it's not really a stadium that's meant to play football on.
And no, totally not designed. I mean, you've got the old Polo Grounds. You could play football there.
Is it still there? I thought it was gone.
Oh, it's not there.
Yeah.
But I mean, they played baseball there. They played football games there. Guess what else they played there? Polo.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Duh.
Sorry, I'm a former Giant.
You're a geek. Chad says BC went 6 of 12 on third down, 0 for 4 on fourth. Good start for Butler when the biggest concern was getting off the field in critical moments. I think that was the big thing. When it mattered most, the defense got the job done. Bend, but don't break.
100%. I mean, I went over the stats at the start of this, and they were overall fairly evenly matched. Nebraska definitely won out in the run game side of things, but that's you've got this situation where the whole bend but don't break thing. I freaking hate that.
So do I. But
they didn't break.
Yeah.
I mean, when push came to shove, the only time I was a little like, really, guys, was that one play after the block punt. You let them basically drag you like 6 yards into the end zone. okay, they had like a 1st and goal at like the 3-yard line and held them on downs, for God's sakes. You couldn't stop them from 6 yards out on one play. So it's kind of one of these maybe pickers can't be choosers here, but I did think the defense did a great job, and that's what kept Nebraska in the game. And I would have liked to have seen the offense finish things out. The long ball, I mean, it's not like Nebraska wasn't trying with the long ball. They were testing BC's defensive backfield all day with the downfield passes. They never connected. I would have liked to have seen them connect on a couple of big hits there.
402-543-5556 if you want to be part of the show. One of the great things about doing this live is that Dr. Rob can do his grades live as well. And, of course, if you follow Dr. Rob on Twitter at Doc Talk Sports, he's been doing a report card after each and every game. I have not heard the grades. I have not seen the grades, and we'll post the grades after this podcast is officially over. But, Rob, why don't you go ahead and start your grades and start talking about why you did the grades.
I gotta pull up my list here. So,
all right.
So run game.
Hold on real quick. Let's take a call.
Oh, I love a call.
Yeah, because you can never go wrong with a good call. And if you want to call and talk to Dr. Rob, because I know most of you don't want to talk to me, and that's fine. 402.
Which, by the way, we've got the Iowa State game on the big screen TV over here. Because Travis is a big Cyclone.
Well, it's a good game,
so
by
he's
the way.
watching that.
It's a good game. 402-543-5556. Is this John from Cherry County?
Yes, sir.
Hey, John,
Yes,
what's going
sir.
on?
Not a whole lot. I kind of want to complain about. So I've watched this Pinstripe Bowl for a few years, and they lay plywood on top of the infield. Then they put plastic down, and then the grass. If they would just put geogrid down, the grass would hold on that infield, and it wouldn't tear up.
No, 100%.
It wouldn't rip apart.
They used so when I played for the Giants, this was, 95 through 98. So this was a while ago. They used a similar product to GeoGrid. And it was kind of a forerunner of it, but they had the old New York, New Jersey MetroStar soccer team would play there during the summer and early fall. So they'd bring in grass on these pallets mounted into a GeoGrid type product that they played there. And it was an amazing surface. So we would play our preseason games and maybe the first 1 or 2 regular season games on that grass surface. And it was absolutely amazing stuff. I think it would have been a way better way to do it. It probably would have been cheaper than what they did do. So, but yeah, that was, and while the surface wasn't great, you could tell guys were playing really tentative in terms of cuts, receivers coming out of breaks, running backs with their cutback lanes, things like that. It was, you didn't see, guys were a little tentative with the footing on that. So you knew there had to have been a reasonable amount of standing water within that grass that was causing some issues for guys.
Yeah, I was super scared about injuries because once you broke through that grass, you were just on plywood. It'd be like running on ice.
Which the scary thing is I played on surfaces like, you looked at Missouri back in the late 80s and early 90s, played on OmniTurf, which was basically turf about a 1/4 inch of sand, it was plywood, 1/4 inch of sand, and then artificial turf with about 100,000 tons of sand spread out over the top of the turf, with the theory that the collective weight of the sand would hold the turf down on top of that plywood, which it didn't. It was just a horrible surface to play on, but it's basically the natural grass version of that old OmniTurf. It's just, horrible surface to play on, but not a good one. And and Travis, you kind of called it. It's not a great setting for a football game. I think there would be ways to do it right in terms of the surface and giving players a good surface, a safe surface to play on. Truth be told, we played I mean, when I was with the Giants, we played the 49ers at the old Candlestick Park.
Okay.
Out on an island. Early season, it was still the Giants baseball field at that point. And so you're running down the field, and I mean, all of a sudden you're hitting base paths. It's like you're on grass, and then you're on you're on brown dirt with hash marks spray painted onto it in white. I mean, it was the weirdest thing ever.
That's brutal.
It was the most horrible surface ever, but that's what you did at the time. And I don't think of that as that long ago, but yeah, you were on a true baseball field with dirt base paths. You'd hit the pitcher's mound, and I mean, they'd take the mound off, but it was basically the pitcher's mound with this diamond shape.
Well, hell, the old Oakland Alameda Stadium was like that for the Raiders.
Exact same thing.
John, I got a question for you. I've been looking at tiny houses a lot. You got any ground I can go plug in at a tiny house up in Cherry County for me?
Ooh, we might have a lot of ground up there for sale.
Yeah,
I'll keep you.
That's prime country, though. It ain't gonna be
that's
cheap.
going to cost me like $40,000 an acre. You know, if Bill Gates doesn't come by it.
Oh no! It's actually it's reasonable. It's actually reasonable.
I just need some electricity and some water. Oh, I need a place for water. I need a place for electricity. Let me know.
You dig a well.
I don't.
Yeah, look in Norden. Look in Norden.
Norden.
I talked to Rob about this in Shields one day. We were looking at handguns. I got to meet him.
You're looking at
Got to
handguns?
meet one of my heroes.
It's
Lots of handguns.
It's well,
you don't live in Cherry County. I know why John wants a gun.
Why? Coyotes?
Because he's in Cherry County. Thanks,
Coyote
John.
and groundhogs.
Happy New
baby.
Year, sir. This coming in from
Yes, sir.
Yep, see you later. This coming in from George. This is on YouTube. And he says, per Sam McEwen, of course, with the Omaha World Herald. And we're not watching the Matt Rule press conference as this going on, but he said Rule stated that during his press conference that special teams needed a complete and total overhaul.
Whoa. I missed that, but I mean, wow.
He's not wrong. At least
no, he's right.
A true leader, a true CEO goes, hey, what do we need to fix? Because the truth is, if he wants to go, you know, the Matt Rule third year thing is a big deal, right? And that is you're horrible first year, you make that improvement.
You're okay second year,
but you're 9, 10, 11 wins in year 3. There's no way in the Big Ten, if Nebraska special teams don't get better, that Nebraska gets to that 10-win mark next year. It has to have better special teams.
I agree. You know, we've talked a lot, and this is something we've talked a lot about for years on the podcast, is that there's this narrow margin for winning. And when you look at a team like Nebraska, you can have the 200 yards rushing, you can have the 300 yards passing, you can have these great performances, you can score a lot of points. If you're going to have turnovers, though, you're going to lose the game. If you're going to have special teams miscues, you're going to lose the game. It's because this margin of victory for Nebraska, it's like this. It is this incredibly narrow margin. And as things go within college football, that margin is going to be narrow for everybody. I've kind of been beating the drum that we need to expand the playoff. And the reason I say that is because everybody is facing this increasingly narrow margin. And you look at the difference between, it used to be that you could say like, okay, there's going to be.
Dude, that triple's a 9.5 and I'm feeling it. Just sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's why I'm drinking Sprite.
Damn. I haven't had beer since March.
There's, dude, you've been drinking vodka though.
I know, but this is just different. Sorry, continue. I didn't mean to. I'm starting to slur my words already.
It's like with beer, like vodka, you're fine.
I am. I'm immune to it now.
Killing me. But my good Lord, the margin is narrow across the board for everybody. And especially for a team like Nebraska, if you've got a team that's not a great team, I mean, we're not Georgia, we're not Alabama. We're not an Ohio State or a Penn State. We're not an Oregon.
No.
We're a very middle of the road.
How far away are they?
I think we're probably closer than people. I mean, look at the Ohio State game. We're probably closer than what people would think.
Just
right
not
off the
consistently.
bat. Well, okay, but that's the whole narrow margin
That's
thing.
fair. That's fair.
That's the point I'm trying to make, is that all of these teams, you're any more in college football with the transfer portal, NIL, the fact, all of this player movement, you're going to see every team shed 20 to 40 players into the transfer portal over the next year to get down to that 105 player roster limit. And I know there's ways, I don't want to say fudge it. There's ways to have more guys within the program. It's not like there's going to be 105 guys in the program and that's it. But it's one of these things where for all of these teams, that margin is shrinking. And the difference between a mediocre team and a great team, it's going to be nothing. It's going to be these little things. But that's what goes back to things like turnovers and special teams, that if you're not looking to improve in all aspects, if you're not looking to go out and get a really good special teams coach to improve that, boy, that margin's going to do this, and you're going to be on the wrong side of that margin.
402-543-5556. That's the number to call if you want to participate in the show. We've had a number of phone calls already. We'd love to have that interaction with you. Of course, you can leave the comments in the comment section if you're watching on X, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Facebook, you can leave the comments in there. A lot of them coming in. We'll try to get to those as soon as we can. But again, 402-543-5556. And to let you know, before we get into Rob's report card, Larry Cannon, I can't find the comment right now because there's so many there, talked about, maybe they should be wearing the G-Defies on Yankee Stadium. We still want you to buy G-Defies, all right? Because Dr. Rob's wearing the G-Defies.
I'm wearing mine right now.
And G-Defy shoes, you had a tweet earlier. A guy he took the time. He read the instructions. They want you to ease into the G-Defies. They give him the break in.
God, mine felt great day one.
He lives in Colorado, went on a nice long walk, and then said for the first time in a long time, his ankles didn't hurt, his knees didn't hurt. So we want you to take advantage of that now. Christmas is over, but you still
I ordered some for Christmas.
Did you? Look at you. You can still take advantage of the Doc Talk 20 pricing, and that is $20 off your order of $100 or more. So go to gdefy.com. That's GDEFY.com. And when you check out, go ahead and just use the promo code Doc Talk 20. That's all caps and all one word, Doc Talk 20, and you'll save $20 off your order. So take advantage of that today. Get yourself a pair of G-Defy shoes. All right, now, report card. We'll start with the running game.
All right, run game, C+.
C+? It's
131 yards.
For some reason, if I didn't know that, I would have thought they rushed for more than that.
Yeah, I thought it was 131. I got to double check. It was right about that.
A C+ for running.
It's okay. C's get degrees. It's a pass.
That's fair.
And I gave it a plus because I thought it was a big difference maker in this particular game. It's, and if people are like, okay, well, why is that not a B or an A even? And I'm like, okay, a B would have been coming out and rushing for 200 yards and controlling the clock for, say, like 38, 39, 40 minutes. That would be a B. And A would be coming out there and just nuking the team on the ground, getting 300 yards of 300 yards on the ground. Keep in mind the point of comparison here. The 95 Nebraska team was like 0.2 yards per game shy of 400 yards rushing per game. So from a point of comparison standpoint, that's an A or an A+. Well, an A would be about averaging 300 yards per game on the season. An A+ would be going out there and hanging 350 on somebody. A B would be 200. This was 131. Yeah, you passed. And actually, you know what? You got a high pass. You got a C+. It's a C+ game. It was good. It was solid. You passed. You won the game. I'm not going to give you better than that.
That's fair. I totally understand that. How about the offensive line?
We skipped pass game.
Oh, sorry, pass game.
Pass game.
By the way, Scott says C+ is fair for 4 yards per carry.
There you go. That's
4.0.
solid. You know what? You won the game. You passed. If you win the game and it's ugly, that's a passing grade. You're not making honor roll. Passing game, I'm going C+ again.
A lot of criticism of Raiola coming in.
You know what? There was the interception. I actually think he was trying to throw the ball away, and the guy just made a great pick, which it kind of okay. If people were watching Big Ten Network, they replayed the 95 Orange Bowl against Miami earlier today. They did the replay in 60 Minutes on Big Ten.
Yeah.
And I was watching where we got the ball deep in Miami territory. First play, Brooke rolls out on a boot. We ran a bootleg. We blocked the shit out of him up front. Brooke rolls out. Nobody's open. He goes to throw the ball away. High and right in the back of the end zone. Defensive back makes arguably it's still to this day, one of the best interceptions I've ever seen in my life. Basically pulls the pass from out of bounds into field of play, catches it, lands 2 feet in bounds before he goes out. Interception, Miami gets the ball back. A lot of people thought that was going to be the backbreaker in that game. Anyway, my point is Brooke was trying to just throw the ball away, and I think Dylan was trying to do the same. You had an extra defensive back kind of hiding out back there who made a really, really great interception. I'm not sure I put that on Dylan when he's trying to throw the ball away and the defensive back is just in position to make a great play on the ball. I'll give him that. He got a lot of criticism on the slide for first down where he slid a little early, didn't get the first down. They went for it on fourth, got it on fourth down. Again, does he have to have better field awareness in terms of where that first down marker's at? Yeah, he does. At the same time, you want to protect the quarterback. If he thinks that hit's coming, you got to start the slide. Unfortunately, you're down where you start the slide. It's not where you actually hit the turf. It's where that slide begins at. And Dylan took a lot of heat on social media for that one. Yeah, he's got to get better about field awareness and first down marker awareness and know where he can start that slide. And he's got to be, dude, you got a kid who's 6'3", 6'4", 225. He can take a hit. He's going to have to take that hit. You had the one play where he went, hit the slide and got hit, popped up, got in the defender's face. They called a personal foul on it. I'm not sure it really should have been called a personal foul. But Dylan's able to take a hit. Go get that extra yard. Is that criticism warranted? And I would say yes.
Krillin says, scary to hear an anesthesiologist say C's get degrees.
I did not get C's. I had all A's in undergrad.
Rob Smart, just ask him.
And I was way better than C's in med school too. But it's reality. It's truth.
See?
But Dylan does have to be better at that. Now,
well,
the long ball.
I want to bring this up because
it's tough in a game like that with the long ball too. I would have liked to have seen a little better accuracy on the long balls because that's something he has been good at most of the year. So anyway, passing grade C+ as well.
C+. So you got C+ on running game, C+ on passing game. David says play calling on offense still has a jack of all trades but master of none feel to it, especially the series on the goal line that had the blocked field goal. I'm going to give Dana Holgorsen a pass here, and here's why. I don't think he wanted to change anything massively from this team, what they've been used to all year long.
This was what, his fourth game?
Fourth game. So he started
third or fourth game?
USC. Let's see. You had UCLA.
I thought USC was game one.
USC, and then Wisconsin, Iowa. And now the bowl game.
So fourth game.
I think you'll see much better play calling next year with Holgorsen.
It is, and I think what what David's asking about here is like identity. You want a team having something that they can hang their hat on. The one thing I do think Nebraska did a pretty good job of, and again, the running game wasn't always there. They did a couple of things that I thought was good. One, they did stick with the running game. I mean, they never really got away from it for that entire game. And I thought that was good. I thought it was at worst, well, I already gave it a C+. It was reasonably productive. It was a passing, running game. Stick with it the whole game. And they did. So I don't have a problem with that. I think you've got to test defenses deep. And the one thing that I thought that I liked actually about Satterfield as well, too, as well as Holgerson, he's willing to test teams deep. He's going to, you know what, even if that run game is clicking, something's working, it's going well, he's still going to take that deep shot on you once a series, once every other series, and he did that again today too. And I think you do that because it does keep the defense honest, because guess what? You hit that twice in a game, it's an absolute game changer. You get those huge gains, that can be a backbreaker for an opponent.
So running game C+, passing game a C+, offensive line?
I'm going B-.
Wow. That's a high grade for the offensive line from you.
Well, it's one of those things where I thought overall, and I actually tweeted this, I thought Gatula and Benhart did a very good job with pass protection on the edges. There was one play where they got to Raiola. Otherwise, for the most part, Raiola sat back in the pocket and had really good pocket protection that whole game. It wasn't one of these things where he was out there running for his life. And that was fun to see. I mean, I love to see it when a quarterback can sit back there, make some decisions, and you got a young guy who's still kind of feeling things out. He's on his second offensive coordinator in a season. That's not the easiest thing to have to deal with. And so, and you're still working with an offensive line that to a degree is a patchwork offensive line. I thought Gatula did a really good job. I mean, you got a kid in Gatula that I've been watching here since high school. He's a Lincoln Southeast kid. I hate giving too much praise to the Knights, but you got a guy that I think has done a very good job. He's the most consistent left offensive tackle we've had since Teddy Prohaska before Teddy got injured. I mean, he's really, really consistent. I thought he did a really nice job on pass protection today. I thought he did a solid job in the run game. I liked what Benhart did. And I've been hammering Benhart for it feels like 8 years now.
It does. Vicious is what you are.
And
you're a pit bull.
And last season, I thought Benhart had a really consistent year. And then for the better part of this season, that consistency went away and he was completely hit or miss again. And I thought he had a really good game today. Now, I mean, I got to be honest. I mean, Boston College's best defensive player declared for the NFL draft and did not play today. So you take their best player. He's a defensive end rush guy. He's out of the picture. Does that help Gatula and Benhart? Yeah, it helps them. But at the same time, you block who you've got in front of you. And I think they all but maybe one play on offense. I thought those two guys did a really good job of blocking guys up front. I thought in the run game, I thought the interior offensive line did a reasonably solid job. The interior cutback was there most of the game. I mean, the play side on a lot of those quick dives and draws maybe got clogged up quickly, which happens. The cutback lane was there, and that's due to the guards and tackles, or the guards and center play. So I thought the interior offensive line did a solid job. So I'm going with B-. I thought it was a pretty decent job by those guys.
Defense.
Yeah, I'm going to give them a, oh boy. This is kind of the tough one, because BC moved the ball fairly consistently throughout
they didn't break.
Game. They didn't break. I'm going to give them a B. The faults I have on the defensive side is the big plays. They did give up. Every other series, they gave up a big play, and that kept BC in position to score. They did a great job of keeping them off the scoreboard. I mean, you had a one-play drive after the blocked punt. Other than that one, again, that's it. If they had stopped BC on that, it's hard to call it a series or a drive when it's one play. But if they had stopped BC after the blocked punt, I probably would have given them a B+, maybe an A-.
By the way, Rami says it's good to see you back in Nebraska gear. And then Kellen says, one football-related question. Why could literally every team run a screen pass for positive yards except Nebraska? It's funny that
I said that, and,
he did.
And everybody jumped on my ass on Twitter, and they're like, well, Nebraska had one for 15 yards right before you tweeted that. I'm like, well, I can't. It's God, BC lived.
And there's your answer, because Nebraska can't block downfield.
You know, maybe that might be some truth there. That's one of those things where I guess the one thing, again, where I probably downgraded the defense a bit here was the fact that screen pass was there all day for BC. They kept racking up yardage on that thing all day long. So it's kind of hard to overcredit the defense too much. I'd love to see what was Nebraska's screen pass yardage versus BC's screen pass yardage, because BC absolutely owns that one.
Owen's back there screening calls. So if you want to call the show, ask Dr. Rob a question, 402-543-5556. That's 402-543-5556. Number one more time. 402-543-5556. We'd love to hear from you. We're going to hang out just as long as the comments and questions keep coming in. Your overall grade. So you've done everything with the overall grade. It's a win. It's a bowl game win. I'm going to take a guess. I'm going to say you're going to say B-.
I'm going to say C+.
Wow. God, you're hard.
Was okay. It was a win. It got them to 7 wins. The things that kept Nebraska. So Nebraska should have been this season. Should have been a 9-win team. They should have beat Illinois.
Yes.
What killed them against Illinois? Special teams, turnovers. What killed them against Iowa?
A missed field goal and poor tackling
on a screen pass. But you had a turnover at the end of that game that won the game for Iowa. It was special teams and turnovers. It's you take away any one of those plays in the Iowa game, any one of those plays in the Illinois game, Nebraska right now is a 9-win team because of special teams and turnovers. They got to fix that problem. And that was what kept Nebraska from turning this game into this game really should have been a blowout.
I don't disagree with you.
It should not have been a close game.
It never felt close.
No, the only time it felt close was that last touchdown that Boston College scored. They line up, and I'm thinking, oh my God, they're going to go for an onside kick, get it, and we're going to lose this game. And when they didn't do the onside kick, I was like, oh, we actually got a chance now. We might pull this out. But it's the same thing over and over again that you got to fix up. And I understand that. There's some things like turnovers are still going to happen, especially when you're playing in an environment where it's cold, it's wet. There's like a quarter inch of standing water on the field, for God's sake.
Yeah, no kidding.
You're going to have turnovers in that situation. I thought Nebraska did a good job. And again, the one interception that Raiola had, I truly think that was a situation where he was trying to throw the ball away, and you had a defender deep past the point of where Raiola thought the ball was going to end up at, who basically picked up a junk interception, essentially. I'm not sure I really fault him for that. Outside of that, it was all fumbles. And that's something where you look at it was big hits on guys carrying a wet ball. And that's going to get coughed up on occasion. So
I don't disagree with Bruce here. Bowl game of 2 bad teams. I just hope Rule can turn Nebraska around.
Neither team is a great team.
That's true.
I have trouble arguing against that.
But I think they're both kind of in a similar situation, right? I think Bill O'Brien's a pretty darn good coach. I
do, and I think he's going to end up having a really good team here in a year or two up in Boston College if he stays there. That's one of those situations where recruiting is going to play into that into that picture for him. But I mean, when you look at Nebraska, go back to what I just said. On this season, we're literally maybe 2 plays away from a 9-win season. Like 2 plays. That's it. Any one play against Illinois, you got one big play against Iowa, and they win that game as well. And right now, if that's the case, we're 2 plays away from you sitting here giving me crap for picking Nebraska to win 7 games during the regular season.
By the way, I picked them to win 9.
And that's my point. You picked 9 wins.
I did.
Yeah, during the regular season. I picked 7.
Because you're smarter than I am.
Well, and I said 7. I wasn't counting the bowl game. This should have been win number 8 in my mind. But it's frustrating as hell when you look at this season and go, we're 2 wins away from a 9-win season. That hurts. I mean, it really does. Because it's stuff that I think
2 wins or 2 plays.
I'm sorry, 2 plays away from a 9-win. Well, both, but you're literally 2 plays away from a 9-win season. You don't give up the screen pass to Caleb Johnson versus Iowa. You make a field goal against Iowa. You don't have that last fumble against Iowa. It's there's 3 or 4 plays against Iowa. There's, I think, 4 or 5 plays against Illinois that if any one of those plays goes a different direction, Nebraska wins that game as well. 2 plays away from a 9-win season. That's tough to say. I've said it like 7 times here in the last 4 minutes. It's tough to say, and it's tough to stomach. And it's tough to give this team a better grade than an overall a C+ on this game when you're seeing the exact same stuff that kept you from having a 9-win season when you should have had a 9-win season this year.
402-543-5556. Got some questions coming up on the grade. So Len says, so if the run game is a C+ because they ran for 127 yards, you give the passing game a C+ for 236 yards. Based on the conversation regarding rushing yards, I think the passing grade would have been a B. Don't ever try to understand his grading, Len. Just don't try to understand it. Rob just pulls it out of his ass is what he does.
No, I mean, I don't do a true, you add it all up and get the overall kind of thing. And so the reason for the C+ on the passing grade, I saw some drops. And I saw some inaccuracy from Raiola that he usually puts the ball in a pretty good spot in terms of the receivers being able to catch it. And maybe it was a weather thing. Maybe it was colder than I thought. Maybe you got a wet ball and that affects things. But I thought his accuracy was off a bit, and that's why I downgraded him. I would have liked to have seen, especially on those long passes downfield, Get the ball to your receiver a little bit. Get it a little closer to the receiver. Put those guys on those deep passes with Ja'Cory Barney. Get him where he can go make a catch and really start putting pressure on that defense.
Question coming in about the screen passes. This is from Cody. He says, do you think Nebraska was selling out on the pass rush, and that's why the screen passes were working so well for Boston College?
I do. I think Nebraska did play way more aggressively today. Some of it was a tackling thing, though. I mean, I thought Nebraska, it was not their best day tackling. You saw a lot of those guys on those screen passes for Boston College get hit for what should have been, I mean, the same kind of stuff like the Iowa game. These guys should have been hit. Travis was watching the Iowa State game.
It's 28-21 early in the second quarter.
I know that was 21. That was essentially a 21-21 game.
They've hit the over already.
I know, it's talk about a shootout. This is a fun game to watch. Anyway, but it's the same thing on Caleb Johnson's screen touchdown versus Nebraska in the Iowa game. It's, somebody makes a tackle. Iowa's not going to go 80 yards on Nebraska that day to score. You tackle them, you give up 7, 8, 9 yard gain. Nebraska's still going to stop them. They're not going to get 4 more first downs to score on that drive. If Nebraska makes that tackle, The Iowa game is over and Nebraska wins it. Same thing today. It's the thing that was kind of bothersome about those screen passes. It's not that Boston College kept going back to the screen pass. It's the fact that Nebraska, the first 1 to 2 guys to the ball carrier were not making the tackle.
It's weird. Nebraska wins the bowl game. 20-15, your final score.
Which, by the way, I am happy about the fact that Nebraska's got a winning record. Went to a bowl game. That in and of itself is a huge win, and won the game.
And that's where I was going. It still seems a bit negative, but at the end of the year, at the end of the season, it could have been better, sure. But is this a successful season or not? Because you're getting text. People are watching us on YouTube. They're texting you like, did they just hit a Beavis and Butthead? They just
one of my buddies,
Beavis and Butthead.
A couple
really?
of my buddies texting in our group chat. They're
Beavis,
dirtiest podcast ever. Now he's talking about wet balls.
How would you rate the overall season? They got to 7 wins. That was your prediction. So
C plus.
C plus.
It's a winning record. They went to a bowl game. Kind of the big goals I had. I wanted a winning record. I wanted them to go to a bowl game. That's passing. But again, you look at you're 2 plays away from a 9-win season. That caps you at C plus right there.
So now what turns around is Nebraska's got to get ready for a completely different landscape. You've got 105 roster.
So do they have to have that limit during the 25 season?
I'm
not 100% sure. If somebody wants to message us here on the live stream, let me know that.
But you start to have to prepare for it. You have another transfer portal round coming up. That will be towards the end of spring ball. So they're going to lose more.
And that's going to happen.
It's going to happen every year, folks.
You've got a dump. I mean, you've got a roster of 150 guys. You got to dump nearly 50 guys off of this roster. It's going to happen. I mean, we were talking about some of these guys who are making plays today are going to essentially get cut.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things I do not like about the shift here. I haven't had a major issue with the transfer portal. I have not had a major issue with NIL. I don't like some of the things that happened with the House ruling and how teams have decided, all right, we're going to do 105 players and cap it there for cost savings reasons across the board. That I do not like.
I think you could be a happy medium, and that is, okay, you can have, and guys don't like this, it still won't help the walk-on program, but I still think you'll have a number of people that would still like to be a part of the program, and this goes for any college program, and that is you have 105 scholarships. You can divide that up any way you want, but for the most part, only 105 can, like, suit for a game or what. I mean, you don't get to run out 150 on game.
And I think that's what's probably going to happen, and I know I see this is one of the rules. I don't know all the ins and outs of it. When we did our podcast with Troy Dannon, he had mentioned that there probably is an avenue here on some level for Nebraska not Nebraska, teams in general to have more than 105 guys within the program. It's just you're going to have guys who are designated as you're a roster guy or you're a non-roster guy. And I think kind of probably the best comparison would be if you look at the NFL. NFL suits up and has 53 guys on an active roster, but they've got more than 53 guys who are fully fledged, full salaried NFL guys. And then in addition to that, you've got practice squad guys. So on any given NFL team, you've got far more than 53 guys. Now, it's not, you don't have 100 guys, and I don't know what the full number is, but that's probably closer to about 60 or 65, maybe even 70 players on an average NFL, within an average NFL team. I think you're going to have something like that, where you're going to have essentially what amounts to a practice squad / inactive roster of guys. where you've got an in-house pool of players that you can draw from. It's just not going to be the 105 rostered guys.
So Ryan's got me fired up because he says this: disagree with Rob. NIL and transfer portal has ruined college football.
And if that's your opinion, I see it that too.
I don't. That's bullshit. Tell me how it's ruined college football. College football is better. And I get into this argument with people on Facebook all the time. It's bullshit. College football is better than we've ever seen it. There's more parity. There's more competition. You have more teams competing. The college football playoff is better than we've ever seen it.
Okay, but you're also looking at this from a zero-sum standpoint.
Yeah.
I'm not looking at it as an either or. I'm looking at it in gray areas. And in the gray area where I look at it is I say, okay, well, here's the good that's come out of it. There is an increasing level of parity. I keep wanting to expand the playoff. And the reason I say I want to expand the playoff is because all of these players going into the portal, the movement of players between teams is what all of a sudden allows a Vanderbilt to knock off an Alabama to knock off a Georgia, a Texas to beat Georgia twice, in Oregon to be back at the top spot again. I mean, I'm not sure they've never won a national title, so I shouldn't say top spot again, but it's got these teams in the mix that wouldn't necessarily be there otherwise. And that gap is going to narrow between the worst teams in college football to the best teams in college football. It's going to be an ever narrowing gap here. And I'm okay with that. That's a good thing. The thing that kind of sucks, the thing I don't like about it, and where I agree with this, is that you look at Nebraska with a kid, let's say like Borkerker. He might be the best tight end on Nebraska's team this past season. Well, he's down at Texas A&M right now because of NIL, because of the portal. He's a guy that I would have loved to have had for a sixth year, but he's not sticking around. I don't blame him. I think he did. I'm going to just do a test the waters thing and see what happens. Holy shit. Look what A&M's going to pay me to go there. I don't fault him for doing that. I don't like it though.
Well, Dustin says if it's ruined college football, then you wouldn't be here. And that means listening. Maybe you don't like it as well as you used to, but ruined is a hyperbole. And I think that's in Dustin's case, because
you do have to understand what we consider college football now is a completely different product than what we had
because it's
5 years ago.
It's evolving. For the longest time I was against paying players. Now that I see it, I'm like, no, this makes a lot of sense because there are billions of dollars that are being flown around every single day. When you talk, and I'm not talking millions, I'm talking billions. And we as human beings,
the University of Nebraska annual budget averages about $5.3 billion a year.
We as human beings resist change. It's just natural.
Yeah.
We don't like going outside our comfort zone. Is it perfect the way it is now? The answer to that is no. Is the college football playoff perfect? No.
Yeah, we need more teams.
I don't disagree with you. But all I'm saying is this is going to work itself out, whether that's through collective bargaining, whether that's through multi-year contracts to where you're going to be able to at least hold on to somebody for 2 years. But we're in this transition period where it's uncomfortable. We don't like being uncomfortable. And if you loved college football so much, then are you watching the Pop-Tarts Bowl? Are you watching the Gasparilla Bowl?
It's a hell of a game, by the way. Pop-Tarts Bowl.
Because people want to hold on to the bowl system. Bowl system sucks. It does. Get rid of these fucking bowls. It doesn't make any sense anymore. I'm not interested in any of them.
Well, and I'm not, other than the personal interest I have in the fact that Nebraska went to a bowl game this year. What do I want an expanded playoff? I look at 16 as a minimum. But I would love to see
if FCS can do 24, then why not do 24?
See, that it makes a ton of sense to me, but everybody keeps telling me I'm full of shit. We only need 4 teams in a playoff. So there you go. I understand the gray area here, and I understand that It's changed the landscape of college football dramatically. The silver lining that I see is all of a sudden there's this parity where we hit these conference championship games, and all of a sudden people were like, wow, does Georgia really deserve to be ranked where they're ranked? Is Texas all that good? Why did Ohio State make it in? Holy crap, look what Ohio State did in the first round of the playoffs to a what most people regarded as a very good SEC team. And all of a sudden, I'm like, yeah, this is why we're doing this playoff shit. And the whole NIL portal has gotten us to this point where you can be the 6th, 7th, 8th best team seeded in a playoff, and you can go in and do some serious damage. And I love that. And right now I'm sitting here going, okay, we can complain about Indiana being in the playoff and SMU being in the playoff and Clemson being in the playoff and be upset about the fact that Ole Miss and Alabama are not in the playoff. And I get both sides of this argument about who should be in and who shouldn't be in. And in my mind, the answer is, okay, the bottom line is we've got growing parity here.
Very much so.
We've got a lot of teams. You're not. Oregon is the only undefeated team in the college football playoff,
and they're not clearly the best.
And they had an amazing season. That was a 1-point loss to Ohio State at Oregon. You can't tell me that they're this runaway favorite to win it. Right now, I'm looking at Texas. I'm looking at Georgia. I'm looking at teams. I mean, Georgia had what, 2 losses, almost 3?
Yeah,
we got to Google.
Yeah,
this.
no,
Anyway.
almost 3. Hell, they could have lost the SEC title game. A lot of this is coming in, and Cody says best. And there's a bunch of comments just like this, so I'm not going to put them all up there. This is the best part about games is teams get to guaranteed extra month of practice. I can solve that really fucking quick, and that is everybody gets a month of practice. There it is. That's all you have to do is say, yes, you didn't make the college football playoff. Everybody else gets to practice for the month of December.
The
problem solved.
Yeah, and I get that. The thing there, though, is that's an evener. And I do think you ought to have some reward for winning.
Don't the teams that lose need the better? I mean, if you lose a lot in the NFL, you get the number 1 draft pick.
And you know what? That's a good point. If the goal here is parity,
and that's the goal,
then you give everybody that advantage.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you made a point there. You sold.
Wow.
Me on it.
I convinced the smart guy of something. Can you believe that?
Wouldn't have thought an Iowa State fan would have done that.
Come on. We haven't had a phone call in like 40 minutes. So 402-543-5556. How did that get up there? Rodney says, it's all about the money. Doesn't educate the athlete. No commitment. Who's giving me the money? Not many make it in the NFL. How many walk-ons absolutely change their lives?
So, I mean, this is one where I'm kind of okay with that in the sense, because here's the thing. If you're a college kid, if you're a college-aged kid, and somebody comes to you and says, hey, here's an opportunity. It's going to be worth 5, maybe 6-figure dollar amounts. Do you want to take it or not?
Yeah.
Yes. You take that.
Yes.
If that means you kind of got to go through some hard knocks of financial learning. But yeah, if you're an 18, 19, 21-year-old, whatever, and somebody gives you an opportunity to make 50 grand, 100 grand, $250,000, yeah, you take that. I don't have a problem with that.
Nor should you.
No, I feel bad.
Guess what? I read a story the other day about a student at UNO, University of Nebraska, Omaha. She's just a regular student. She has an Etsy shop. She's making like $100,000 a year selling bookmarks. Do we have a problem with that?
Why is she in school and not doing this full time?
Why? You can get a degree. You're selling bookmarks. You're making $100,000 a year on Etsy. Nobody has a problem with that. I would rather have the money be out in the open than a brown paper bag that Rob used to get.
Why am I hanging out with you and like I want to go make bookmarks now?
Rob used to get a brown paper bag from the Beef Club.
I never got the brown paper bag.
He got the brown paper bag.
Dude, I was like the 4.0 nerd that people are like, yeah, we're not giving you jack shit, dude. You're the goody two shoes that'll turn us in.
Yeah, but you know what? If you would
Whose dad works for the university, so
I was gonna say, if you would not have been an athlete, you probably would have made money during college.
Yes, I actually would have.
Yes.
I had an academic scholarship money that went above and beyond cost of attendance that I could not keep, by the way.
You had to give that back.
They offset it on the athletic scholarship. So I kept the academic money. They reduced the athletic scholarship by the equivalent amount.
Wow. I mean,
which I look at that now and I'm sitting here going like, you got to be freaking kidding me, really? For real? Which, by the way, I pointed that out to the NC2A. I was on a couple of NC2A committees, and I pointed that out to the NC2A executive committee that I had buddies who were students only, did not play an NC2A sport, who were literally making money could pocket that extra money if their academic scholarships went above and beyond the cost of attendance. They could keep that money. I, as a student athlete, could not. They changed that rule.
As they should have.
My senior year, so I never got to experience it.
David says, bring in Joe Mowgli to the basement and ask him how to fix D1 football. Joe knows how to.
He's been there. You got to watch her podcast. Yes. He's had that breakdown. Although Joe has very much, it'd be interesting to see, because as much as the dynamic of the portal and NIL has changed over the last year, it'd be interesting to see what Joe's take on things is, because historically, and again, when I say historically, we're talking about the last few years. We're talking about not even 6 years.
No.
Joe has very much kind of been steadfastly, I don't want to say against it, but critical of the structure of it in its current state. And Joe's also been very critical of the NC2A in terms of how the NC2A managed all of this, which is essentially washing their hands of it and letting it completely play out with zero regulation.
All right, 402-543-5556. Let's go out to North Platte. That's where Dan is. Dan, welcome to the Doc Talk podcast. What's going on, Dan?
Well, the question I have is that the whole NIL thing, blah, blah, blah. Are the student athletes still getting scholarships to play? And if they are, why would they not have to pay that scholarship money back if they transfer out? If they've taken advantage of the education, the training table, the coaching, all those kind of things. And that's the question. I simply don't know if they're still on scholarship or not.
If they are on scholarship, they don't have to pay it back if they leave. It's kind of one of those.
The cost of doing business.
It is. It's a sunk cost. I mean, the players have already been there. Now, they're not getting scholarship money past the point that they leave. But while you're there, you get the room, board, books, fees, and tuition for the time that you were there. The interesting thing is that a lot of these players, I mean, you've got a lot of walk-ons that are not on scholarship because of NC2A scholarship limits, but are essentially having everything paid for via NIL. So it's a little bit of a convoluted system in that regard. And I think the way things are going to change here with the 105 player
and the $20 million payroll, $23 million.
The roster limit that limits things at 105 players. My understanding is all of those guys are going to be on true athletic grant and aid scholarships, which it's
too much beer.
No, I'm sitting here trying to figure out a way to phrase this because it's an idiotic system, quite frankly, because it's there's no cost to the university. It's not like the university is going, hey, we're paying these guys the scholarship. They're just basically saying
that's an Excel spreadsheet, move a number around.
That is it. You're just moving dollars around on a spreadsheet. You're talking again about, I mentioned it earlier, you've got a university system that currently has a $5.3 billion annual budget. Are you telling me that 105 guys, that you're out of 24 to 25,000 undergrad students, giving 105 guys a free education? I don't know if they're going to class or not anymore, but
when's the last time you saw somebody academically ineligible? I can't tell you. I really cannot tell you the last time I saw.
It's been a while.
It has been.
I think it's changed that system as well too. But you can't tell me out of a $5.3 billion budget, 100 guys are making any kind of dent in that budget when you're allowing them to go to school and not pay for school. It's complete bullshit. And that's one of those things where I always complained about the NC2A and scholarship limits, is that I've always thought if you're an NC2A athlete and you're willing to put in the time to do the sport, if you're on an NC2A team in good standing, if you're willing to do it, let school be free, period. Don't have scholarship limits. And that was a little bit of a seeing the light that they had with this 105 limit. The thing is they ended up calling it a limit because I think it helps some of the smaller schools a little bit, but it's a moronic system. And the idea that these athletes are a cost burden to the school when it comes to scholarships, it's absolutely moronic. They don't cost
first
the
of all,
school anything.
No, in fact, and thanks for the phone call. I appreciate it, Dan in North Platte. Let's be honest about athletics. If your athletics team is winning, you are making money for the school. And I'm not talking about just athletic revenue. My daughter works at the University of Mississippi. And I've told this story on this podcast many times. When she went to the University of Mississippi to run the marketing for the housing program, there were like 3 dorms that were empty. They had an enrollment problem. Lane Kiffin shows up and wins. You know what they don't have? They don't have an enrollment problem. They have a housing problem now where they have to build like 2 or 3 new dorms because there's not, and they're renting like all the apartments in Oxford because of the influx of students.
Tails wag dog.
Yes, they do. Friend of the show, big beer lover, Matt Pinkerton joins us from Omaha. Matt,
nice.
Welcome
Matt,
to the Doc Talk podcast. What's going on, Matt?
Hey, good, gentlemen. I thought this was a lot of football talk for a beer podcast.
Well, I tell you what, it's the first. My daughter works at this brewery down in New Orleans, and it's called Ecology.
By the way, can I just crash on her couch if I can get a job there?
This is a really good beer.
Yeah,
really good beer.
Good stuff.
What did she send up for you?
We've had a Belgian triple. We were drinking the Czech Pilsner right now.
It is like the lightest colored Belgian triple. I was not expecting it.
Yeah.
It hits like a Belgian triple.
And we had a Scotch. The Scotch ale earlier was really good.
Scotch ale was really
good.
That was a great beer.
It's good variety there. No, actually, I had a football question, but I did want to get that beer comment in there first. But do you guys worry about college football fatigue a little bit with conference realignments, opt-outs, transfer portal? It just seems like it's really, really hard to kind of keep up with things. And, you get attached to players and all of a sudden they're gone. And it just seems like it's going to be tough sitting in Memorial Stadium and you're watching, players come and go all the time and not knowing, jersey numbers and everything else. I kind of worry a little bit about a little fatigue.
You know what? It's a great question, Matt. I don't. And the reason I say that, here's why. Look at the NFL.
That's fair.
Arguably the greatest sports. I don't know if greatest is the best way to phrase it. It is arguably the strongest sports entity in existence. Nobody has a better fan base, draws better numbers, has higher TV revenue, better ticket sales per per team. I'm not sure. I mean, obviously NBA teams play 100 games, baseball teams play 100 games. But your per capita ticket sale, however you want to phrase that, it's the best. It is the strongest business model in sports.
And it's not even close.
Nobody comes close to the NFL. That is the product that college football is moving towards right now. And I think when you look at the playoff, at some point you're going to see a more refined structure with a playoff. I do think it ends up expanding. I think 16 teams ends up being the minimum. I think at some point you're going to have some regulations regarding the portal is going to get regulated by NIL. I think NIL is going to get regulated because it's all going to come in-house. And I think you're going to end up seeing collective bargaining. We've talked to Connor Orr about this multiple times, that it's only a matter of time. And keep in mind, we've had this system for less than half a dozen years. And so you're going to see some of these changes coming about, where you're going to see increased regulation, you're going to see rules set up, you're going to see a framework, a structure to NIL and the portal that ends up giving this a little bit better stability. But I mean, when you look at the NFL, I don't remember. I mean, it was nearly 30 years ago when true free agency hit the NFL. I mean,
Reggie White was like the big first
it was
free agent.
about 35 years ago when true free agency hit the NIL, or hit the NFL. I got NIL on the brain. When free agency hit the NFL, everybody's thought process, well, this is the end of the NFL as we know it. Like this, fans are going to stream out. Nobody's going to follow this anymore. We're now 30 years later, and again, the NFL is stronger than it was 30 years ago. You're going to see that happen in college football.
I mean,
and I do think you're going to see some structure to the portal, to NIL, and I think you're going to end up seeing I think stabilization is probably the best word for it. You're going to see some level of stabilization here. I think that comes with collective bargaining once that happens. But I think you're going to end up with the stabilization of college football once that happens.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate the phone call, buddy.
Happy New Year, guys.
Same
Absolutely. Got to make it out to heavy.
You mentioned Connor Orr.
There.
I needed some estate planning questions, and you know who I went to?
Did you go to Connor Orr?
Went to Connor Orr. And if you need litigation, if you need estate planning, if you need representation, Connor Orr is the person to go to. Visit the Orr Law Group at orlawgrp.com. That's orlawgrp.com for all your lawyering needs. And they're growing. They have a wide variety of representation for you. Again, I needed estate planning. So I went to Connor and said, hey, can you help me out? He said, sure. And I said, can you do that pro bono? He said, no. I said, okay, I get that. Totally understand that.
He knows his value.
He knows his value. If you're looking for, I know the holidays have passed, but if you're looking for some stuff to give somebody for the basketball season, of course, Fred Hoiberg in Nebraska just won that tournament in Hawaii. The women's team is pretty good. You can go to Husker Hounds, 2 locations in the Omaha area, to huskerhounds.com as well. But Rob probably got that at Husker Hounds, didn't you?
This was from Husker Hounds.
Look at you. So here's the deal. This is our last podcast of 2024. This was our 40th episode. So we only missed 12 weeks during 2024. That's not bad.
That's solid. It's good.
Pretty
output.
solid. We need to thank a lot of people. We need to thank Connor Orr and the Orr Law Group. We need to thank Husker Hounds. We need to thank G-Defy. G-Defy came out of nowhere. It was one of these things where they're like, hey, have you ever thought about doing a shoe deal? And I'm like, what? And they did up till September with us. And they said, you guys have been absolutely great. And they renewed through the end of the year. And we want to thank G-Defy because G-Defy was so good and helped us out. And let's not forget about Centris.
I wear my G-Defies every day.
And let's not forget about Centris Federal Credit Union. Not officially part of the podcast, but they do the diagnosis. And the diagnosis is something we do during the regular season. And Dr. Rob draws up plays. We're going to have kind of a brainstorming session.
And occasionally they are our de facto New Glarus hookup.
Well, yeah. Steve Swanstrom is very good about going to Wisconsin because his daughter goes to med school or dental school at Marquette, and he always stops at New Glarus for us. So that's cool. And the truth is, and I don't tell him enough, and I love him dearly, is my son Owen, who this podcast would not be possible without Owen. Okay. He's back there screening calls right now, but he puts a lot of work into this podcast. He is the glue of this podcast, and we thank him tremendously, right? You do, don't you?
Oh,
I do.
Dude, I'm always talking about the fact that Owen's the reason we do what we do.
Dave,
able to do what we do.
David says, will there be a last diagnosis? It might come later in January because Rob's getting on a plane tomorrow.
So
not telling everybody he's out of town, but he's going to be out of town. He's going to go to the sunshine. He's going to get some sun on that bald head is what he's going to do.
Work my tan.
With your tan, and you're going to go see your daughter, which is really
there we
cool.
go.
Yeah. So we want to thank you for listening to this podcast all year long. And we've been podcasting really since like 2010, but not full time, but during the season, really since like 2012. We're one of the longest podcasts around. And we've only been on YouTube for like 3 years, and you guys are awesome.
Subscribe, please.
Yes, subscribe.
It does make a difference.
It makes a huge difference if you subscribe to the channel. So if you can just hit the subscribe button, that'd be great. This podcast would be running on there. I'm going to edit it down, take that 5-minute countdown out. And if you are in New Orleans, if you ever go to New Orleans, go to Ecology Brewing. It's right by the Superdome. It's less than a mile walk from the Superdome. That sounds like a long ways. It really isn't when you're in New Orleans. Maybe my daughter will be working when you're there. But Ecology Brewing for supplying the beer today. Dr. Rob, Happy New Year. Thanks for hanging out with me for another year. I'm going to give you a week break, and then we're
back up and running.
In 2025, we're going to start the during the offseason, we always do the interviews. So we're going to start lining up some interviews, talking about who we want to have in here. And I know Adam Carricker is going to come on. We just got to kind of get a timing out and stuff like that. But Nebraska wins today 20-15. It should have been bigger. It wasn't pretty, but they finished 7-6. Good win. Good season at 7-6. Good, not great. It's good.
It was a C+.
C+.
It was C+.
Dr. Rob.
You know what it was? It was a solid Matt Rule year 2 year.
So and the truth is, there's not much time now because you have another recruiting season. The February one doesn't mean very much, but then winter workouts, spring ball, and it all rolls into another. And put the pressure on Matt Rule. We want Matt Rule on this podcast. We'll go to Lincoln. He doesn't have to come to the basement.
We went there to see Troy.
Yeah, so we'll go to Lincoln, and I think we want John Cook on. There's a lot of people we want on. So again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being part of this podcast. Give this channel a subscription, like the video, leave a comment, and enjoy your new year. For Dr. Rob Zatechka, for Owen Justice, I'm Travis Justice. We'll talk to you in 2025 right here on the Doc Talk Podcast.